I love technology. Oh yeah, I love technology because it is teaching us or showing us that a lot of things that in the past were considered to be true and in contemporary society we've tried to pretend are not true. Well, technology is showing us that in fact it is true. The quote-unquote prejudices and quote-unquote bigotry of the past are accurate. And one of those prejudices and bigotries of the past is physiognomy. What's physiognomy? Oh, it's very simple. Physiognomy is the notion that when you look at somebody's face, their facial features can tell you something about their moral character. All throughout history, up until the last century or so, people believed in physiognomy. People believed that there were certain faces that were more cruel or less trustworthy, just as they thought that there were certain faces that were more trustworthy or more decent and good. You see what I mean? People didn't go by this as a universal rule, but there was a sense that there was something there. But during the 20th century, that became anathema. The notion that people's faces could reveal something about their true character was considered just, like I said, bigoted, retrograde. It was considered, out of fashion. People were all supposed to be this blank slate. People were all supposed to be identical, equal in moral character, and their faces meant absolutely nothing. Until technology and the Chinese. Yeah, because the Chinese were the ones who started taking pictures of people in mass and doing some comparative analysis about it, irrespective of the political correctness, or rather political incorrectness, of their study. Yeah, they started looking at people's faces and looking how their criminality might be correlated to their facial features. Oh yeah. They were doing this because they wanted their AI to be able to recognize faces more quickly. And so that's why their research into AI and face recognition technology took this weird turn in this direction. It's not an obvious direction, but it has had astonishing implications. Because in their research, the Chinese discovered that there was a correlation between certain features and criminality. Don't take my word for it. Just do a quick Google search. You'll find it. It's very easy. See? The stuff is out there. It came out recently. And the fact of the matter is that it creates all kinds of problems for leftists and people who don't want to recognize the truth. Well, it's goddamn funny, but here's the upshot of it. The Chinese took pictures of all these criminals and they input it into the AI. And it turned out that the AI could successfully identify criminals something like 70% of the time, if not more. I forgot. Hey, look it up. You don't have to take my word for it, okay? Look it up and you'll find it. It's easy to find, like I said. And they found that it was a non-trivial number of times that they could successfully recognize a criminal just from their faces. Because what was going on was that the AI had successfully correlated certain facial characteristics, certain ratios between the length of the nose and the mouth and the cheekbones and the eyes and what have you, and correlated those numbers, those ratios, to criminal behavior. And of course, what this leads to is the obvious inference. You might be able to predict, just from looking at somebody's faces, whether they are a criminal or maybe whether they will become a criminal. Well, in all honesty, if you read the study and such, it's an open question whether there is predictive value in this, because it's unclear whether whether criminals' faces are a result of their criminal behavior somehow, or whether those who have those features will become criminals. The jury's still out on that question. But regardless of that question, something that is of more interest to you and me is the fact that, as I have always believed, and science, these Chinese people are proving it, see, you can see what kind of person you're dealing with if you look at their face. You can tell their morality from looking at their face. Now, this shouldn't be that surprising now, should it? Yeah, because see, tell me how many times you've looked at the face of some girl and she might be objectively attractive, but you're like, I don't want to deal with her. There's something wrong about her. There's something bad about her. Or on the opposite end, how many times have you met some guy and he just seemed like an ordinary guy, but there was something about his face and you're like, I want to be friends with this guy. This guy, he's a nice guy, he's a good guy, and I want to be friends with him and I want to hang out with him. And just by looking at the guy's face, how many times have you been in a situation where you looked at the guy and you thought to yourself, ooh, this guy is going to try to pull a fast one on me? True story. Back in March of 2018, I was setting up this studio, right? And of course, I don't know Russian. And so I needed some help translating to get workers to move stuff around and such. And so I hired briefly this medical student who is fluent in English and fluent, of course, in Russian. He was a nice kid. This kid, his name was Alexander. You know, he worked for me for about a week. And at one point, he called up a couple of buddies of his, or acquaintances rather, to help move some stuff around. Because, you know, him and me alone were not going to be able to do it, right? And he brought in one guy. And this guy, I just looked at him and he seemed sketchy as fuck. He looked sketchy as fuck, even though he looked really no different from the other college students that Alexander had called up to help us out, right? The fact of the matter is, he called them rather, to help me move this wood, this MDF wood that eventually became these tables, right? So anyway, they came over, and there was this one guy of the three guys that I thought, he's sketchy. And I told this to Alexander. I told him, I said, keep an eye on this guy. This guy is sketchy. This guy, he looks like a thief. That's what he looks like to me. Fast forward about 3 months, and Alex gets in touch with me, right? And he's calling me up because he needs to know if I need anything done because he needs money. And I asked him why he needs money. And he tells me because that friend of his had stolen his laptop. I helped him out with a few bucks, yeah, sure. But the point remains, see? Just by looking at the guy, I knew the guy was sketchy. Oh yeah. Physiognomy is real, okay? The SJWs, the polite leftists, you know, polite society might pretend it's not, but it is, okay? Not all the time. A lot of times you'll see somebody and, you know, it'll look like, you know, butter would not melt in their mouth. Like, for instance, there's the model, Miranda Kerr, right? I know for a fact that she's a slut. She is a huge fucking slut. She's fucked more dick than God knows who, right? But yeah, you look at her and she looks like a little fucking angel now, doesn't she? Yeah, but, you know, so you can't always be guided by the looks, okay? It's not proof positive that somebody's a good person, okay? But if they look sketchy, they probably are. Now, of course, some of you are probably saying, well, you know, coach, you look sketchy. Maybe you are bad. I don't know if I'm a good man or a bad man. It will take my maker to make that judgment, assuming that there is a maker. If there's no maker, well, you know. But my point remains, and it's a very serious point. Don't fuck around with this. If you start to think that somebody, just by looking at them, is sketchy, assume that's the case. It's better to be proven wrong than to be proven right, now isn't it? Now, of course, there's a reason that physiognomy was, quote unquote, discredited in the 20th century. And the reason is that, see, we want to have the illusion that people's exterior appearance means nothing. We want to have that illusion because we want to have the moral framework of judging people by their actions and not prejudging them based on their looks. But the fact of the matter is we prejudge everybody insofar as their looks are concerned. Oh yeah. I mean, you're looking at me now, right? And how am I dressed? I'm dressed in a t-shirt and a ratty old hat, you know. I mean, do I look like an expert? No. Do I look like I'm dressed up in a lab coat with a little name tag and a pocket protector? No. Do I look like I'm a scientist? Of course not. I look like just some random guy, right? But if I wanted people to think that I'm a scientist, well, I'm going to dress up like a scientist. Because that's how other people will judge me. If I want to be taken seriously as a lawyer or a businessman, I got to wear a nice suit, right? If I want to be taken seriously or trusted in anything, I have to look the part. And the face of the human beings that you come across, often as not, they'll be the only source of true illumination. Because we human beings are awfully good at hiding who we truly are. Now, aren't we? The face reveals. Don't let anybody ever pretend otherwise or tell you otherwise. Never buy into that brand of bullshit. The face reveals, and these Chinese AI scientists, they prove that, okay? Like it or not, people's faces reveal who they are. Don't be afraid of making judgments based on that. And don't be afraid of making mistakes based on those judgments. It could be that you're proven wrong, like in the case of Alex and his friend. It could have been that I thought he was sketchy, but it turned out that he was like an angel, right? It could have been the case, but it wasn't. And that's why Alexander had to come up with $500 to buy a new laptop.